So Tallpad now has about 550 registered users and over 100 signups in the last 30 days alone. Because of that, I thought it would be interesting to see which lessons generate the most signups. Basically, what I want to know is what was the last lesson the user saw before deciding, hey, I'm going to create an account on this Tallpad thing. The simplest solution I was able to come up with is when the user goes to a lesson page, set up a cookie with that lesson ID, and then when they finally register, save that lesson ID in the database. It's not highly accurate as the user might go through multiple lessons before registering, and that last lesson might not necessarily be the one that convinced them to sign up, but it's good enough. So let's get to it. The first thing I'm going to do is to create a new test using PHP artisan, make test, lessons controller, test. Let's open the file and replace this existing test with a new one. Let's say showing a lesson sets signup lesson ID cookie. So what we want to test is that whenever the user visits a lesson page, a signup lesson ID cookie is being set with the ID of that lesson. To make this test work, we'll need a lesson. So let's create one using the lesson factory. Then we need to make a GET request to this lesson page, and I have a route for that called lessons show, which needs a series slug. And we can get that from lesson series slug and the lesson slug. Let's store the response of this call in a response variable, and then assert that it was successful and that a cookie was set. So assert cookie signup lesson ID is our lesson ID. Now if we run this test, it should fail because there is no signup lesson ID cookie. So let's go inside the lessons controller under the show method, and to set up a cookie we'll need to replace this with a response object and then call the view method. And to set a cookie, we can do cookie signup lesson ID and pass the lesson ID as a second argument. If we rerun the test, it surely passes. Now that we have the cookie in place, it's time to make sure we are using it in the registration flow. So I'll open the registration test, scroll down, copy this test new user can register, and say test track last lesson ID before registration. And here what we need to do is, well, first we need a lesson. So we'll do lesson factory create. And then when the post request is made, we need to make sure we have a cookie. So we'll do with cookie signup lesson ID is equal to lesson ID. And now we need to assert that the user has been authenticated and redirected home, and that there is a user in the database that has signup lesson ID equal to lesson ID. If we run this test, it will of course fail because there is no user with signup lesson ID. So let's open the registered user controller, scroll down to the store method, here where the user is being created. Let's add signup lesson ID, and we can grab it using cookie and the facade get signup lesson ID. If we rerun the test, it will still fail and we are not getting any helpful information. But to do that, we could disable the exception handling. So we could do this without exception handling and rerun the test. And now it says that table user has no column signup lesson ID, which is true. So let's create a migration for it. We'll do PHP artisan make migration, add signup lesson ID column to users. Let's open the migration and we'll say table unsigned big integer sign up lesson ID, and it will be nullable. And on down, we'll do table, drop column, sign up lesson ID. Let's rerun the test, and it passes. Now that both automated tests are passing, it's time to do some manual testing. I'll boot up the server, click on the link, and let's go to a lesson. And now if I open the DevTools and go to Application, Cookies, we surely have the sign up lesson ID. But to make sure that everything is working, let's create an account. And now if I go and check the database, in the users table, let's scroll to the end. Here we have the sign up lesson ID, which is 18 for our new user. And that's it. I'm really curious to see how the lessons will rank in a couple of months. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it, subscribe, click the bell button, all that good stuff. Bye!